At Sainsbury's, we're often visited by the people who run rival supermarkets.
Look at the price of this. It's very low, sir. I can see that.
The fact is, Sainsbury's is a bit of a puzzle to them. Our quality is high, but our prices are low. In regular surveys, we are cheaper than most of our rivals on famous brands.
I think I'm going to cry.
These are very keenly priced, sir.
And of course, with Sainsbury's own brand, you'll be able to save even more.
The chain, sir.
Sainsbury's, where good food costs you less.
Listen very carefully. This appendix is very quiet because it's very well engineered. And for a machine this quietly reliable, there's only one powder we'd recommend. Persil Automatic.
Ember is the model of a satisfying beverage. It's richer and it's smoother, more delicious than the average. Particularly favoured by Dame Hilda and by Dr. Hinge, whose academic sampling shouldn't be mistaken for a binge. If you are well acquainted with matters inspirational, you'll know that Ember Cream's ideal. At moments conversational, at parties, at the piano, by the fire. It's most adorable. Whenever you choose Ember Cream, you'll find it's one most memorable.
Ember Cream, for the upper bracket.
Aftershave with After Effects.
Oh, you're almost ready, Diane. How about a coffee?
You've changed brands.
There's probably Nescafe in another jar.
It can't be. Nescafe don't make coffee for anyone else. Only Nescafe has that special blend and roast for that richer, smoother taste.
Nescafe coming up.
Well?
That's the Nescafe taste. It's the one for my customers.
Oh, good. A hairdresser with fringe benefits.
Nescafe don't make coffee for anyone else.
All right.
It's a teapot. Armadillo.
Gentlemen, will you please concentrate? You have all night until you are correct.
A pint of Guinness.
Correct?
Pure genius, John.
Aye.
It's the strong, dark body and the deep, inspiring taste that makes Guinness.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Armadillo.
Pure genius.
Is Britain falling behind in the great world electronics race? Do we have enough engineers and scientists, the sort of technically minded management teams needed to ensure future industrial well-being and prosperity? How can Britain create a kingdom of scientists? John Swinfield investigates some possible solutions in The Second Revolution, tomorrow at 10:30 on Anglia.
This is Anglia, and the time now is 10 o'clock.
There now follows a party political broadcast by the Conservative Party.
Be upstanding in court.
Members of the jury, we are here in this courtroom because the government has had serious allegations made against it. The outcome of this trial will be decided by you alone. With your votes, you have the power to sentence this country to 5 years hard labor. Consider your position carefully.
My lad, the Conservative Party stands accused of making serious cuts in everything this country holds dear.
And how does the defense plead?
My client pleads not guilty, though we do admit to the making of cuts.
You admit making cuts?
Yes, my lord. Cuts in income tax. Cuts in the number of those liable to pay tax. Cut by 1.25 million people. The government also admits to cutting the number of strikes. Cut to their lowest rate in 50 years. The government further admits, if one may say so, to cutting Mr. Scargill down to size.
Well, I object. Mr. Scargill should be given the opportunity to reply.
Very well. Call Arthur Scargill.
Call Arthur Scargill.
Call Arthur Scargill.
It appears Arthur Scargill does not recognize the jurisdiction of this court. Proceed.
My lord, another cut. Inflation has been cut nearly in half, whereas the only thing the last Labour government cut in half was the value of the pound.
Well, lad, if the Labour government failed economically, it was because it put compassion first. The Conservatives may have cut inflation, but what about cuts to our hospitals? Does the defence admit cuts here?
It does, my lord. My client has cut hospital waiting lists by more than 75,000 people.
My lord, I object. I wish to show the true state of the National Health Service today. Witness, please. Matron, how many fewer nurses and midwives are there in the health service now than when this government took office?
Fewer? None.
None?
None at all. There are now many more nurses and midwives, 58,000 more. Also, the number of hospital doctors and dentists has increased. Do you want to know by how many thousand?
No. Yes.
By 5,000 more.
Remarkable.
But is it not so, Matron, that the hospitals are now treating far fewer inpatients?
No. The facts are, in 1984, our hospitals treated 800,000 more cases than were treated in the last year of the Labour government.
Thank you, Matron. Does the defence wish to say more about cuts?
No, my lord. I prefer to say what my client has increased. Home ownership, up by 1.5 million. Manpower for the police, up by 13,000. Real take-home pay, also up. Witness, please. Sir, would you tell the court what happened to your take-home pay under Labour?
It nearly doubled. But so did prices. I ended up worse off.
And under the Conservatives?
Answer, please.
I'm better off now. Much better off.
Members of the jury, in real terms, take-home pay for the average worker has gone up by 13%. The standard of living is up, pensions are up, benefits for single parents are up. And after allowing for inflation, spending on cash benefits for the long-term sick and disabled is 35% higher than in Labour's last year.
In the light of this evidence, does the prosecution intend to carry on?
Yes, my lord, because one charge still remains. That this government has failed to do anything about unemployment.
My lord, unemployment is serious. My client admits this. But let me show you what this government is doing. It is spending 3 times as much on help for the inner cities as did the last Labour government. It has set up the youth training scheme so that every school leaver can be trained for work. As from April next year, no 16 or 17-year-old need be on the dole. And just last week, the government announced extra help for those out of work for more than a year. The government also has encouraged new jobs. Last year, more new jobs were created in Britain than in the rest of the European community put together. The Conservatives have cut. They admit this. Yes, they've cut strikes, cut inflation, cut waste, cut taxes. And it's because of these cuts that this country has the real hope of a better future. My lord, the defense rests its case.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's for you to decide if this country is worse off or better off under the Conservatives. We will, of course, accept a majority verdict.
That was a party political broadcast by the Conservative Party.
This is Anglia, and the time now is 5 minutes past 10.
MPs are voting now on televising the Commons. Good progress in Geneva. They may talk to the press together. Mrs. Reagan says it's not a fashion war. Mr. King is attacked by loyalists in Belfast. The machine that made PC olds walk can help others. Good evening. MPs are voting now on whether to allow television cameras into the Commons for an experimental period. We expect to hear what they decide during news at 10. It now looks as though Mrs. Thatcher will vote against. She was originally opposed to the experiment, but lately she was said to have changed her mind, and the main question now is how many MPs will follow her lead tonight. The motion is that this House approves in principle experimental televising of its proceedings and will set up a select committee to organise the experiment. Now, let's go over to Westminster, where our political editor, Glyn Mathias, is waiting with the latest news.
At this moment, MPs are going through the division lobbies, deciding the issue whether or not to admit the television cameras. As the arguments have ebbed and flowed during the day's debate, so has the discussion and speculation about how the vote is going to go. It's a free vote, there's no party whip, but much depends on how many MPs follow the lead of the Prime Minister, and Mrs. Thatcher has decided to vote against the cameras. She had indicated at one stage that she was in favour of televising at least the big occasions, but now it seems she's been swayed by the fears that admitting cameras may change the nature of the House and damage its authority. The question today was whether MPs should follow the example of the House of Lords and go for an experiment of televising. Kevin Dunn reports on the debate.
If ever there was a debate the broadcasters would have loved to have shown, this was it, with MPs freed from their party whips, inspired by personal conviction rather than political commitment, the chamber crackled with life. The motion to approve an experiment in televising and set up a select committee to regulate it was proposed by Conservative backbencher Janet Fuchs. She said the public was entitled to see, as well as hear, democracy at work. But the most stirring arguments in favour of televising came from two former party leaders.
For us to suggest in this year that we are going to continue to refuse the public to hear what is happening here by the means of television, which is the major form of communication throughout the country, I say is not merely to deprive this House of Commons of its capacities and its rights, but it is to insult the public as well.
Any idea that the press today guarantees the freedom of the individual in this country has now become a fallacy and a farce. The one opportunity in which the public have of judging us as to what we are really like and what we are really saying is on television. And by having it in this House, we shall go a long way to providing, once again, a guarantee of individual freedom.
But many MPs were unconvinced and expressed fears that television would trivialise proceedings, emphasising the sensational rather than the serious.
Television is in essence a branch of show business. And however absurd or comical our proceedings may be sometimes here, what we are generally about is the state of the nation, and that, I suggest, is not a form of entertainment.
What we have no right to do to those whom we represent is to present to the public a misrepresentation, a caricature, a falsehood about this place. And that is, I believe, what of necessity, of its nature, would be the result of the televising of this House.
Liberal MP Alan Beath had a different concern, the problem of balance.
There is, Mr. Speaker, a three-way political debate going on in this country at the moment. And if television, when it comes into this House...
Don't you think that's the way to persuade more companies to come to this region and get more jobs as I want them for the people who are unemployed, not always standing there as moaning minis? Now stop it.
But we do have the highest,
Prime Minister. Are working very well.
Unemployment rate in mainland Britain.
Yes, indeed. But you want, in fact, more jobs. So do I. And therefore you have to say, look, come to this region. Come and look at the success stories in this region. Come and see what the work people of this region can do if you put your confidence in them. That is the way to get more jobs. Not your way. I want more jobs. Now cheer up and go and boost the success, and you're much more likely to get more jobs then.
Can you tell us, Prime?
The Social Democrats leader, Dr. David Owen, told his party conference in Torquay today that there was a new world in British politics. He said to the Conservatives and Labour that after the next election they'd have to deal with us or have some explaining to do to the electorate.
David Owen decided to speak without a prepared text. Instead, he gave his audience a low-key but detailed view of a range of issues. First, in the wake of Handsworth, racialism.
I don't think you can see the discriminatory statistics wherever you look, in housing, in jobs, in standards of living, in opportunities, without us who have shared in the decision-making of those institutions accepting a major responsibility.
Dr. Owen was sparing with personal jibes against his opponents, but he did allow himself one remark about Mrs. Thatcher.
Now, I'm told, and there's a little justice in this criticism, that I suffer fools badly. The problem is that she shuffles fools gladly.
Next, Dr. Owen turned to the role of the alliance if there's a hung parliament.
It isn't letting in the Conservatives or letting in Labour. It'll be a totally new programme, a new government. We'll fill it out, the extremism, the nonsense, the cant, the humbug, and the ideology. And if they won't negotiate with us, we'll vote them down. We will talk first, if we don't have the largest number of votes in a balanced situation, to the party that does have the largest number of votes. If they don't want to talk to us, well, then we'll talk to the other party. And they'll have some explaining away to the electorate, I might tell you.
It hadn't been a conventional rallying call, but the delegates liked what they heard all the same.
It was a Jeff boycott of an innings rather than Ian Botham. The shots were measured, but they certainly were good shots.
I don't believe we're in the business of the kind of oratorical, artificial events that the other parties go in for. We're for genuinely telling it how it is to the people.
I think he was trying to redress the balance which had been indicated earlier in the week that he might appear to be sub-Thatcherite. And I think that he did that in a very reasonable sort of way.
So Dr. Owens left his party in good heart and in an accommodating mood towards the Liberals who meet next week. David Walter, News at 10, Torquay.
Among the SDP policies approved at the conference were £5,000 million to be put into the economy for growth, and employment cut to by 500,000 in 2 years. They ruled out an immediate one Ireland policy, and they voted for a freeze on nuclear weapons if talks for a reduction fail.
The men who found the wreck of the Titanic say their research has shown that more passengers could have been saved from drowning by the crew of another ship, the California, which was in the vicinity at the time. The captain of the California has always said he was too far away. But now that the exact spot of the Titanic has been located, the expedition leader filming the sunken liner says he wasn't as far as he claims.
We'll try and bring that story back to you later. Now, how a used satellite was recharged and revamped and sent out into space to meet a comet, a report next. Plus, in Cardiff and in football, the salute to Jock, Stein. And Bobby Robson's England are held to a draw. That's in a couple of minutes.
can't wait to get my hands on all those lovely durables.
Oi, I'm not made of money, you know.
Oh, this is a bit of all right. Come on.
Hold on, Money. Maybe we could pick it up cheaper down the road.
I don't think so.
I'm accepted in over 225,000 places, Money. Not chained to one chain store, unlike some people.
You're right, Access. I must broaden my horizons. I'm always taking advantage of store card lately.
Promises, promises.
For more details, contact us on 01200 0200.
Access, your flexible friend.
Free in Woman's Weekly. Our novel bobbins keep your colours separate, plus super designs and money off vouchers. Part of every Woman's Week. Woman's Weekly.
An American satellite has made space history. The satellite, called ICE, has taken 7 years to travel 44 million miles through space in order to intercept the comet, the Giacobini-Zinner, the first time it's ever been done. The 5-foot-tall satellite withstood the impact as it sliced through the glowing tail of the comet, and it sent back its unique analysis to NASA.
It was a second-hand spacecraft that had already completed its assigned mission. But to Dr. Bob Farquhar of NASA, it offered a chance to make history. He's an astrodynamicist specializing in the high mathematics of orbits. He worked out that by firing the spacecraft's tiny boosters over a 3-year period, he could spin it 5 times around the moon until, after passing within 70 miles of the lunar surface, it hurled away into space for a rendezvous 44 million miles away. His target, the obscure comet Giacobini-Zinner, not as famous as Halley's, but if they made it, NASA would be first to bring back scientific information from a comet's tail. 7 o'clock this morning, 2 minutes before the rendezvous, and with no cameras on board, mission controllers could only watch their instruments and try to imagine what would happen. Would the spacecraft be destroyed by the debris in the comet's tail? Would it survive the encounter? Then, at 2 minutes past 7, from a telescope in Arizona, this live picture of the moment that made space history, and from the spacecraft, the sound of the meeting 44 million miles away. But hearing the sound from space proved easier than tuning into mission control by telephone 50 feet away.
Can we increase the volume a little? They've lost that channel. We'll hear from Dr.
Finally, the good news got through.
Okay, as you can see, we have successfully gone through the tail of a comet for the first time in history.
It found many surprising things. The comet is much more active than scientists expected. At 14,000 miles, the tail much thicker. And there was no dust inside the tail either, as it passed through right on target.
The only thing I'm worried about now is I was thinking about selling a comet sample return mission, a dust sample return mission, and I don't know how I'm going to sell that now because we haven't found any dust.
And the second-hand spacecraft will return. It should be back in Earth orbit around about 2012. Ken Rees, News at 10, Goddard Space Centre.
Football paid tribute today to Jock, the Scotland manager who died last night after his side almost certainly qualified for the World Cup finals. England's manager, Mr. Bobby Robson, said a night of triumph has been turned into tragedy. Scotland's captain, William Miller, said the game now means little or nothing at all.